Deep Space Research Station Helios hung silent in the void, its array of sensors constantly scanning the darkness between stars. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the main observation window, her reflection ghostly against the backdrop of space. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, forgotten in the excitement of the night's discoveries. "Dr. Chen," the station's AI called out, its voice carefully modulated to avoid startling her. "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures at the edge of the Kuiper belt. The patterns don't match any known human vessels." Sarah set down her mug and moved to the primary sensor station. "Show me, Araya." The holographic display sprang to life, filling the air with a three-dimensional map of the solar system's outer reaches. Dozens of points of light pulsed in formation, moving with deliberate purpose toward the inner planets. "Multiple vessels," Sarah murmured, her fingers dancing across the interface. "Their drive signatures are like nothing we've ever seen. Araya, begin full spectrum analysis and alert command." "Already done." Araya responded. "Command is requesting your preliminary assessment." Sarah studied the data streaming across her screens. The vessel's arrangement suggested intelligence, purpose, and most importantly, technology far beyond current human capabilities. This wasn't some natural phenomenon or sensor malfunction. This was first contact. "Send to command. We are observing what appears to be an organized fleet of non-human origin. Recommend initiating First Contact Protocol Alpha. These ships are too advanced to be anything but a spacefaring civilization." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. More staff arrived at the observation deck, and military vessels began moving into defensive positions, though they maintained enough distance to avoid appearing threatening. Sarah had fought hard for this approach, arguing against those who wanted to show immediate force. "The First Contact Protocol exists for a reason," she had insisted during the emergency briefing. "We show peaceful intentions first. Always." The alien fleet continued its approach, maintaining perfect formation. Their ships were beautiful in a strange way. Organic curves blended with crystalline structures that seemed to catch and reflect starlight. They moved with a grace that made human vessels look clumsy by comparison. "Dr. Chen," Araya interrupted her thoughts. "The leading vessel is transmitting something. It appears to be a directional energy beam aimed at our communication arrays." "This is it," Sarah breathed. "First contact. Araya, prepare to receive and begin translation protocols." The beam hit their arrays, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the station's speakers came alive with sounds that made Sarah's teeth ache. Clicks, whistles, and tones that no human throat could produce. "Analysis suggests a language pattern," Araya reported. "Beginning basic translation matrix construction. The message appears to be repeating on a loop." Sarah watched as the first attempts at translation appeared on her screen. The aliens, who called themselves the Viridians, were requesting information about human military capabilities and territorial boundaries. There was something about their phrasing that bothered her, but she couldn't quite place it. "Send the standard greeting package," Sarah ordered. "Full spectrum, all frequencies. Include the mathematical sequences and peaceful contact protocols we've prepared." The response came faster than anyone expected. The Viridian ships suddenly altered their formation, spreading out in what military advisors immediately recognized as an attack pattern. "What happened?" Sarah demanded, scanning the translation. "Araya, what did we miss?" "Processing," Araya responded. "Cultural context analysis suggests." "Dr. Chen, I believe our mathematical sequences have caused alarm. The Viridians appear to interpret mathematical precision as a sign of hostile intent." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Of course, what humans saw as a universal language, the Viridians might see differently. Their entire first contact protocol, carefully crafted over decades, might have just inadvertently declared war. "New transmission from the Viridian fleet," Araya announced. "Translation in progress. They are demanding immediate human surrender and the deactivation of all deception matrices. I believe they're referring to our communication systems. This is exactly what we wanted to avoid, Sarah muttered, watching as human defensive fleets began to move into position. Years of preparation, countless simulations of first contact, and they'd managed to terrify their first alien visitors within hours of meeting them. But perhaps there was still hope. Sarah had spent her career studying theoretical alien psychology and communication. If mathematical precision was seen as aggressive, what would the Viridians interpret as peaceful? "Aria," she said, her mind racing. "Prepare a new transmission. This time, we're going to try something different. Very different." The future of human-alien relations might depend on what she did next. Sarah just hoped she could figure out how to say peace in a language that saw humanity's most basic assumptions as threats. Admiral James Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Hyperion, watching the holographic display of the Viridian fleet with growing concern. His ship, humanity's most advanced vessel, felt suddenly primitive compared to the crystalline structures facing them. "Status update on the research station's attempts at communication," he ordered, keeping his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. Lieutenant Maya Patel looked up from her console, dark circles under her eyes betraying hours of continuous work. "Dr. Chen's last transmission was unconventional, sir. Instead of mathematical sequences, she sent them music, Earth's classical compositions, indigenous songs, even children's lullabies." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Music? That's her solution." "Sir," Maya's eyes lit up with understanding. "The Viridian ships, look at how they move. They're not in standard military formation. They're dancing." The Admiral studied the display more carefully. The alien vessels shifted in patterns that seemed almost rhythmic, their movements fluid and interconnected. What they'd initially interpreted as attack formations might be something else entirely. The moment of revelation was interrupted by a new alert. The Viridian fleet had launched something. Hundreds of small objects, each about the size of a human hand. "Defensive systems online," Torres barked, but Dr. Chen's voice cut through the command channel. "Wait, don't react. Those aren't weapons. They're trying to communicate." The small objects spread out, forming complex patterns in space. Each one began to emit pulses of light in shifting colors, creating what looked like a massive, three-dimensional light show between the two fleets. "They're responding to our music with their own art," Sarah explained, her voice filled with excitement. "This is how they communicate complex ideas, not through mathematics or language, but through patterns and rhythms." Torres watched as the light display grew more intricate. It was beautiful, but beauty could hide danger. "That's fascinating, Doctor, but how do we know this isn't a prelude to attack?" "Because they're making themselves vulnerable," Sarah replied. "These devices, they're part of their ships. They've literally taken pieces of themselves apart to talk to us. In their culture, that must be the ultimate show of trust." The display shifted, and suddenly the lights began forming recognizable shades, crude representations of human vessels, then the research station, then something else. The pattern showed the human ships moving away, retreating. "They're still afraid of us," Maya observed. "They want us to leave." Torres felt the weight of command bearing down on him. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, but no one had expected it to be quite like this. They had prepared for violence or peace, for advanced beings or primitive ones, but not for a species that saw the universe so fundamentally differently. "Dr. Chen," he said finally, "how do we tell them we want to stay and talk? That we're not a threat?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Sir, I have an idea, but it's risky. We need to show them we understand their way of thinking. We need to do something that, by their standards, proves our peaceful intentions." "What are you suggesting?" "We need to power down our ships, all of them. Not just weapons, everything except life support. Show them we're willing to make ourselves vulnerable too." The bridge erupted in protests. Powering down would leave them defenseless if the Viridians attacked. It went against every military protocol, every survival instinct. But Torres looked at the alien fleet, at their beautiful and terrible ships that could probably destroy his fleet in seconds if they wanted to, and made his decision. "Do it," he ordered. "Send the command to all ships. Power down everything except life support and basic communications." One by one, the human vessels went dark. The mighty Hyperion, pride of Earth's fleet, became little more than a floating shell of metal in space. Torres held his breath, watching the Viridian fleet for any sign of hostile movement. The response came in a cascade of light and color. The alien devices rearranged themselves, forming new patterns, circles within circles, spirals of light that seemed to reach out toward the human ships. The Viridian vessels moved closer, but not in attack formation. They were mirroring the humans' vulnerability. "They're showing us their ship's cores." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "The patterns. They're sharing their own heartbeat with us." Torres watched as the space between the fleets filled with light and color, a dialogue written in art rather than words. They were still far from understanding each other, but they had found a beginning. "Send them more music," he ordered, "and get me every artist and musician we have on the station. We're going to need a new kind of diplomatic course." As human music once again filled the void, mixing with alien light patterns in an impromptu symphony, Torres allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had just learned its first lesson about the galaxy. Sometimes the best way to show strength was to be willing to appear weak. The makeshift cultural exchange center aboard the Helios station had become an explosion of color and sound. Holographic displays showed endless loops of Earth's greatest artworks, while symphonies played in carefully orchestrated sequences. Dr. Sarah Chen watched as a group of musicians performed a piece composed specifically for this moment, a melody that mimicked the rhythmic patterns of Viridian ship movements. But behind this artistic facade, tension still crackled like static electricity. "They're mobilizing more ships," Admiral Torres reported during the morning briefing. The holographic display showed dozens of new Viridian vessels appearing at the edge of the solar system. Either they're still not convinced of our peaceful intentions, or something else is making them nervous. Sarah studied the new data, noting how the alien ships moved in increasingly complex patterns. "They're not preparing for war, Admiral. They're scared. Look at their formation. It's defensive, like a protective dance." "Scared of what?" "We've done everything possible to appear non-threatening." Before Sarah could respond, Aria's voice cut through the room. "Priority alert. Detecting massive energy surge from the Viridian fleet. Pattern matching suggests weapons charging." The room erupted into motion. Officers rushed stations, and alert signals began blaring throughout the station. But Sarah remained focused on the display, watching the light patterns emanating from the alien ships. "Wait," she called out. "Aria, overlay their current light pattern with their first contact display." The AI complied, and two patterns appeared side by side. The difference was subtle but crucial. "They're not charging weapons," Sarah announced. "They're trying to warn us about something." As if in confirmation, new signals burst from the Viridian fleet. Urgent, pulsing patterns unlike anything they'd seen before. The translation matrix, now calibrated to interpret Viridian artistic expressions, began generating possible meanings. Danger, darkness, hunters. The words scrolled across screens as the AI attempted to decode the warning. They come. They destroy. They consume. Torres leaned forward, his expression grim. "They're not afraid of us. They're afraid for us." The realization hit just as new contacts appeared on their sensors. Massive objects moving at impossible speeds, emerging from the direction of deep space. These weren't like the elegant Viridian ships. These were dark, angular shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The Viridians weren't an invasion force," Sarah whispered. "They were running from something, and now they're trying to warn us." The new vessels, the hunters, as the Viridians called them, moved with terrifying purpose toward both human and Viridian fleets. No attempts at communication, no artistic displays or cultural exchange, just the silent promise of violence. Send to all ships, Torres ordered. Battle stations, but coordinate with the Viridian fleet. If they're trying to help us, we need to work together. The next hours were a blur of activity. Human military vessels formed up alongside their former adversaries, two species united by a common threat. The Viridians shared what they knew through their light pattern language. The hunters were ancient, implacable, destroying or enslaving every civilization they encountered. But as Sarah watched the preparations for battle, she noticed something extraordinary. The humans and Viridians weren't just cooperating. They were learning from each other. Human ships began moving in formations that mimicked Viridian patterns, while Viridian vessels adopted the more direct, efficient maneuvers of human tactical doctrine. They're not just warning us, Sarah realized. They're offering to fight with us. They could have fled deeper into human space, used us as a buffer. Instead, they're standing their ground. Torres nodded, watching as the combined fleet took up defensive positions. Then we show them humanity's greatest strength, our ability to adapt, to take what we learn and make it our own. The admiral turned to his communications officer. Send to all ships, human and Viridian. We're about to demonstrate why you don't threaten either of our species. As the hunter fleet drew closer, Sarah observed the incredible sight before her. Human ships moved in graceful, Viridian-inspired patterns while maintaining their tactical positioning. Viridian vessels pulsed with light displays that had been modified to confuse and disorient the enemy rather than communicate. Two vastly different species, learning and evolving together in the face of extinction. The hunters would soon learn that they had made a serious mistake. They had pursued what they thought was a fleeing prey species into the territory of another potential victim. Instead, they had forced the creation of something unprecedented. An alliance between two civilizations that had turned their differences into strengths. The first shots would be fired soon, and the solar system would witness something unique in its history. Humanity and the Viridians, dancing together in a battle ballet that would become legend in both their cultures. The hunter fleet emerged from deep space like a swarm of shadowy predators, their ships absorbing sensor scans and light alike. Admiral Torres watched from the Hyperion's bridge as the enemy approached the combined human-Viridian defense line. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each understanding the gravity of what was about to unfold. Hunter fleet will enter weapons range in 3 minutes, Lieutenant Puddle reported, her hand steady on the tactical console despite the tension. Torres nodded, studying the tactical display where human ships now moved in perfect synchronization with their Viridian allies. The past 12 hours had seen both species racing to combine their technologies and tactics. Human engineers had worked frantically to integrate Viridian light pattern technology into their communication systems, while Viridian ships had adapted their formations to complement human battle strategies. All ships report ready, Patil announced. Viridian light pattern translation confirms they're in position as well. The hunters made no attempt to communicate as they approached. Their ships, massive angular constructs of some dark material, moved with mechanical precision. Scans showed them to be heavily armed, their hulls bearing the scars of countless victories against other civilizations. They're trying to split our formation, Sarah Chen observed from her station, where she continued coordinating with the Viridian commanders. Look at their approach vector. Torres saw it too. The hunter fleet was moving to drive a wedge between human and Viridian forces, likely expecting the newly formed alliance to break under pressure. They didn't understand what they were truly facing. Execute Operation Lightens, Torres ordered. The combined fleet responded as one. Human ships launched clouds of specialized drones, devices that had been rapidly modified with Viridian light technology. The drones spread out in complex patterns, creating a massive three-dimensional grid of light and energy between the Allied fleet and the approaching hunters. The hunters hesitated for the first time, their formation slowing as they encountered something they'd never seen before. The light grid pulsed with changing patterns, broadcasting in the Viridian artistic language, but modified by human tactical algorithms. To the hunter's sensors, it would appear as an incomprehensible mix of signals, impossible to predict or counter. "They're adjusting course," Paddle reported, attempting to move around the light grid. "Spring the trap," Torres commanded. The real attack came from multiple directions at once. Hidden within the light grid, human stealth ships had been waiting, their positions masked by the Viridian light patterns. They struck first, their advanced railguns accelerating projectiles to phenomenal speeds. At the same time, Viridian vessels executed their own unique attack, their crystalline ships fragmenting into smaller autonomous units that swarmed toward the hunter fleet. The hunter's response was immediate and brutal. Dark energy beams lashed out, attempting to swat away the Viridian fragments while returning fire at the human vessels. But they were fighting an enemy unlike any they'd encountered before, two species working in perfect concert, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. Where hunter weapons might have overwhelmed human shields alone, Viridian light tech created interference patterns that diffused the energy beams. When the hunters adapted to Viridian attack patterns, human tactical flexibility allowed for immediate strategic changes. It was a dance of death, choreographed by two species that had learned to turn their differences into strengths. "Multiple hunter vessels showing critical damage," Paddle reported, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "Their formation is breaking down." On the tactical display, Torres watched as the hunter fleet began to splinter. These were creatures used to overwhelming their prey with superior firepower and technological might. They weren't prepared for an enemy that could think in two different ways at once, that could combine art and mathematics, precision and improvisation. "They're retreating," Sarah announced, reading the Viridian light patterns. "The hunters, they're afraid." Torres allowed himself a small smile. "Maintain pursuit course. Show them that humanity and the Viridians aren't just prey species to be hunted. Send the message in both our languages. The hunters have become the hunted." The next hour saw the complete rout of the hunter fleet. Those ships that could still flee did so, vanishing back into deep space, while others were destroyed or disabled by the combined fleet. When the last hunter vessel disappeared from their sensors, a new kind of light display filled space. Viridian celebrations, their ships creating spectacular patterns of victory and joy. Human crews cheered across the fleet, but Torres noticed something else happening. The Viridian victory lights were taking on new forms, incorporating elements of human art and symbolism. At the same time, human ships were moving in formation patterns they had learned from their alien allies, creating a spontaneous fusion of both cultures' expressions of triumph. "Dr. Chen," Torres called out, "please tell our Viridian friends that humanity would be honored to learn more about their culture. And perhaps we have a few things to teach them as well." Sarah was already working at her console, converting his words into light patterns. But she paused, looking up with a thoughtful expression. "You know what this means, Admiral. The hunters didn't just fail to destroy us. They accidentally created something new. This cooperation between our species, it's going to change everything." Torres nodded, watching as human and Viridian ships continued their victory dance against the backdrop of space. The galaxy's about to discover that art and science, passion and precision, aren't opposites after all. They're just different ways of expressing the same truth. The truth that together, they were stronger than anyone could have imagined. 1 month after the Battle of Sol, the space around Earth had transformed. Where once hung a single research station, now floated a spectacular blend of human and Viridian architecture. The Joint Diplomatic Center was a marvel of engineering, its crystalline spires and metal frameworks creating an ever-changing dance of light and shadow. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the center's main chamber, surrounded by representatives from both species. The room itself was a testament to their growing partnership. Human holographic technology merged with Viridian light patterns, creating displays that could communicate complex ideas to both species simultaneously. The hunters have been spotted in 3 other sectors, Admiral Torres reported to the assembled group. The tactical display showed the galaxy map, with known hunter movements marked in red. But this time, they're the ones running. A Viridian elder, their crystalline form shifting through shades of deep blue, created a pattern of light that the translation systems now smoothly converted to human language. They fear what we have become together. News of their defeat spreads through the galaxy's trading networks. Others who once lived in fear now look to our alliance with hope. Sarah watched as human and Viridian technical teams worked side by side, their differences now a source of strength rather than confusion. Human engineers had learned to incorporate Viridian artistic principles into their designs, creating technology that was both more efficient and more beautiful. Viridian artisans, in turn, had discovered how human precision could enhance their light pattern communications, making them clearer and more powerful. We've received requests for contact from 7 other species, Sarah announced to the chamber, all of them previously too afraid of the hunters to reach out to anyone. They want to learn how we manage to combine our civilizations so effectively. The display shifted to show the latest joint project, a new class of ship that incorporated both human and Viridian design philosophies. Its hull could reconfigure itself like Viridian vessels, but with the tactical advantages of human military technology. More importantly, it required both species to operate effectively, a physical symbol of their interdependence. The hunters taught us something valuable, Torres said, addressing both human and Viridian audience members. They showed us that strength isn't just about weapons or technology. It's about being able to see the universe through different eyes, to combine ways of thinking that might seem incompatible at first glance. The Viridian elder created a new pattern, one that merged traditional Viridian symbols with human musical notes. Our species once feared each other because we were different. Now we understand that difference is what makes us strong. The hunters sought to divide us, but instead they forged a bond that may reshape the galaxy. Sarah stepped forward, activating a new display. We've completed the first draft of our joint space exploration protocol. Teams of both species working together to map the unknown regions of space, not just for defense against the hunters, but to find others who might join our alliance. The chamber filled with a combination of human applause and Viridian light celebrations. Sarah noticed how natural it felt now, this blending of expressions. Just weeks ago, these same signals had caused panic and confusion. Now they were becoming a new language, neither purely human nor purely Viridian, but something uniquely their own. There's more out there, she continued. More species in hiding, more ways of seeing the universe that we haven't even imagined. And now we can show them that diversity isn't a weakness to be feared, but a strength to be embraced. As if to emphasize her words, a new signal appeared on the long-range sensors. An unknown ship, its design unlike anything in their databases, was approaching the edge of the solar system. But this time, there was no fear in the command center. Instead, both humans and Viridians prepared to do what they had learned to do best, reach out across the gulf of difference and find new ways to connect. Send the greeting, Torres ordered with a smile. Both formats, human and Viridian. The signal went out, a complex melody of mathematics and art, precision and creativity, strength and beauty combined. As they waited for a response, Sarah looked around the chamber at the impossible partnership they had forged. The hunters had meant to demonstrate humanity's weakness, but instead they had revealed its greatest strength, the ability to grow, to change, and to find harmony in the most unexpected places. In the space around them, human ships and Viridian vessels continued their eternal dance, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't the ability to destroy, but the courage to create something new. Together, they had written the first notes of a new symphony, one that would echo across the stars for generations to come.